Thursday, June 25th, 4:34 p.m. What's up to all my agentic workflowers out there? We are back on the markets. Saw some pretty significant developments that I wanted to talk about from a consumer price perspective today. Again, focusing on the overall momentum progression of the memory chip trade specifically, and then just more talking points throughout the economy. Again, haven't been doing the daily ones, but I thought today in the recent events were worthwhile to get on and talk a little bit about. And so we had Micron's earnings. That is what we are currently looking at. We do have some residual thoughts on a couple biological topics. We talked about it in this trade log, so I figured I might as well continue on here. But we'll also talk about the DFTX trade as well. And so the biggest thing wanting to cover is, again, we had Micron's earnings, what was going to happen. The discussion yesterday before the close of the market was certainly, again, I haven't really been following the conversations on CNBC, specifically responding to most of the conversation, right? I have my little trader TV over here. I just close it up so you can't even see the logo, because who knows, maybe that's copyright. But responding to, again, a lot of our talking points coming directly from the conversations being had on CNBC. I would say the premier financial channel in the United States finance world. But regardless, the conversation on the smaller parts that I saw before Micron's earnings yesterday was, it seemed to be kind of the sentiment was, hey, maybe we have a relief. We have one of these NVIDIA situations where the numbers are going to beat, but is the price action going to follow? And so that was just kind of the brief sentiment of right before the close or within the last 30 minutes of the trading session yesterday. So we did see some weakness down into the close, and then the earnings report hits and we're right back up. And so I see this as strength overall for the memory trade, but not the predominant talking point for today and the predominant economic consideration for why now I think the trade is still as strong as before, and reinforce that we're probably going to be holding at these levels and continue to appreciate from these levels would be my guess, and we'll kind of talk about why. Nothing super secret, just with this raising of prices from Xbox and from Apple. I think Apple was the entire suite of like iPhone, iPad, Mac, just everything. But so now we'll stay with the price action for here on the earnings, then we'll get into that, why I see that as like a bigger, more influential economic progression in terms of the overall where are we at in this trade. And so regardless, we had the beat. Again, there's 100 analysts out there that I'm sure have followed Micron better than I have in terms of the actual numbers, but that is what we say is, hey, this is going to be, I don't even like to use the term priced in, but it's going to be digested effectively immediately. I'm not going to get an edge up on anybody in any financial aspect consideration in terms of like revenue beat, sections of business, this, that. It's just like, those are super specific analysts to one company. But I just think whatever the information is, it gets digested extremely, extremely quickly, and then you just have this momentum price action change to sentiment relationship in which there is some sort of discrepancy in which you can take a position. But regardless, that comes out and whatever the numbers were, whatever it was, we have appreciation in the stock in the stock price. And so just talking a little bit about this progression throughout the day. So this is 4:30 or again 4 o'clock, and then reports pretty much effectively right after, it seems. Trying to be specific to, again, down to like the minutes. But again, your typical earnings report beat. I don't even want to say beat, but your earnings report reaction being an appreciation after the bell and into the pre-market. And so typically, again, that is where we look to short, again, on the immediate short-term relief. Hey, we watch 100 earnings report or 100 companies that report earnings and then see appreciation. Pre-market to me, it's always that from that 9:30 to the 10:15 area or immediately after the bell, it sells off. And then after that morning trade, it's definitely a reconsideration period. And so as always, we don't have constitutional rights, so we're not taking real positions. I think I'm a mature enough trader where it's like I said, I can talk adequately of what I would actually do if I was trading. Again, if I was actually trading, it would be a one share type of thing. So I'm not over sitting here saying, every stock that we're talking about that goes up is like, oh, I missed out big. But these short-term reliefs, specifically pre-market appreciation, again, this would have been a trade I would have taken specifically just for the relief after the earnings report, specifically on Micron. We've been talking a lot about SanDisk, some about Micron, definitely about the memory trade overall. That would have been, and with the asterisks, again, I don't even like to say shoulda, woulda, coulda at all with trading, but again, I'm not saying I would have taken 10,000 shares. I'm saying I literally would have taken one share. But for the overall movement, again, the sell-off of the morning after the earnings report with appreciation seems to be a very consistent movement of overall market dynamics that I consider that will hold into the future. You go find a stock, beats earnings, appreciates pre-market. Hey, Brad, what would you do here? 99 times to be like, I would short that. Again, with the direct intention to close or at least have a trailing stop loss if it does go into my direction immediately after the open. And so with that being said, again, that's when I would have closed. That would have been a point. Again, I think we've tracked like one or two of those. This would have been one specifically because it was the day of earnings. Regardless, we see just overall price levels. Again, kind of like right back to where its top was. So I see that as, again, a strength indicator of the overall reaction. Hey, if we beat earnings and then it was, at like, let's say 1150, but point being is it's right back to the all-time high. And so that was a strength indicator for the overall, hey, this to me looks like it's still we're still going up into the indefinite future. And so that's for specifically to the overall price action. Again, the overall market, again, I don't know really, didn't really have a good gauge on that today. Let's check the S&P. So 734, again, this is SPY. Again, no impact on my kind of considerations for this section or this video. And so, but going back to Micron, and so then we sell, we do get that morning relief, then we sell back up and close kind of, again, 1204 or 12, you can see the same chart I am. Regardless, and so it just, to me, the overall technical response, chart looking, this looks strong to me. The chart is not super pretty, but again, just the overall price level, the actual total 12, hitting 1255, and then closing above 1200 seems, again, pretty strong. But getting to the topic, well, let's jump over to SanDisk. Was that consistent over here? I think it was. Yeah. And so same thing over here with SanDisk, and then getting to the point of the biggest thing and why I see it's the biggest of this Xbox raising their prices of the actual consoles, and then Apple raising their prices of their product suite, specifically citing, hey, the components are going up. To me, they immediately that's not like a short-term decision from like an executive board, right? If you have a quarter of raised prices, it's like, okay, we're operating a business at high margins, like we could eat that cost. And again, I'm not in the mindset of Xbox or Apple, but it's just like, I'm assuming that, this is, to me, that's a decision of like, hey, we're seeing sustained prices for the out into the future to the point where we have to raise consumer prices, not even kind of just eat the cost ourselves. Now, I would say, as just a general kind of categorical statement, which typically never holds, I think I would be more, as an operator, I would be, again, I would pass the raising prices on to consumers less. Like, I think if you took 100 CEOs or 100 people that actually make decisions and say, when should we start, raising our prices, I think I would be on the more conservative side. Like, hey, if our margin's still good enough, because then again, with huge companies like Apple and Microsoft, you have this, again, brand recognition, brand respect, this huge branding aspect where it's like, the quality of what you're going to get for what price. And then where it's like an Xbox console, right? That's pretty, the consoles are now 2026, so they came out 6 years ago, and we're raising the prices now. So it's like almost on the cycle where it's like, hey, we might get a new generation console. It's like, that was another big talking point. Grand Theft Auto just got announced, like an actual hard release date. I think the price is like $79.99, and then like first player is like $20 more or something. As a consumer, again, 33 years old this year, I will buy that game. I haven't even touched my Xbox in like years. But if that's on Xbox Series X, I will play that, and I will buy that personally. No real consideration in terms of a trade or economic prospectus. But just on a personal level, I think I would be, as an operator, I would be more willing to eat cost to keep my, hey, you've been a loyal customer. Let's, you can come in and still get your phone for $1,000 and not $1,100. And so I would think, again, my assumption kind of is that Apple and Microsoft and these big companies would tend to do the same, where if you're raising consumer and consumer prices, I think there would be people that would be more apt to do that than I would. But regardless, I see that as a big step in saying, hey, we're not even seeing like raise prices for a quarter or 6 months. It's just like, we need to raise our prices. So I see that as a big economic indicator for elevated prices, specific for memory, specific for the components of all of this agentic workflow build out that we're all hearing about. Gotta love the agentic workflow. But I do see that as the most significant for this continued raise prices, more so than, again, a market cap valuation. Certainly, like we had our first Fed chair decision with Warsh as our head. Again, the attenuation and how serious like people would just respond to the rates, to me, is just not, as we've talked about a ton of times, it's just never convincing. And so always more sector-specific stimulus, and certainly always company-specific stimulus. But I do see, like I've said before, sectors just trading more as one conglomerate, or as the most meaningful differentiation, a sector amongst an economy versus a company versus a sector. The sector being the most dominant thing that will move with some sort of conviction. And so that is what I see as the biggest, hey, with this price action, with this earnings report from Micron specific to these memory names, again, I'm still just not in a position where I'm trying to like trade. And so I'm not taking any position, but I'm moderately bullish again for the immediate term into these stocks specifically. Again, still kind of this summer shakeout, whatever you want to say. I kind of feel like just overall sentiment and price action, that is definitely on the table for July. If we do get one of those, if we get popping on over to the QQQI, if we do get another one where I feel like it's a short-term oversold, where, again, hey, we might even make some profit, within a day or two, but then if not, holding just an index fund, again, any sort of, depreciation around 53, or again, where we sold, would be a consideration. Again, just how severe the drawdown would be and how quickly. That is when we would take a position, and we would probably almost certainly make a little update video clip. But that's really my only thoughts, because, again, I don't have constitutional rights. I sit here waiting to get extorted, and it's just the amount of people directly aware of how violated my rights are and how severe the crime is. It's just like, get me the fuck out of here. But trying to stay productive. So that's really my thoughts for these ones, wanting to focus on the raising of the consumer end prices, because, again, re-emphasizing, I see that as very significant in overall business function. Again, what is a company at market cap wise is arbitrary and transient for a huge section of value. 1 trillion, 800 billion, or 80 billion, or 75 billion. It's just like, I don't know. And I don't think, every time I hear somebody say, like, this company should be valued at this, or this should be trading here, it's just like immediately, again, proven wrong. We're in this environment where it's like, you can prove insecurity is just being projected. They're just saying this shit, and there's no, like, way to, it's in this realm of undecidable, right? They're saying stuff that's not nonsense. It could be like, oh, that could work. But then it's just like, you're provably just like trying to rationalize your own behavior, and it's just like, you can't do anything with that. But that is what I see for Apple. And so getting over to DFTX, again, this was literally, again, had 1,100 shares. It was definitely 1,000. I think it was 1,050 to 1,100. Certainly something I would have averaged down. But this is now, again, right around a 1,000% return. And so, frankly, it probably brings me back to right around flat. I would have to do the exact, but I think, again, we closed MNMD down like $5,000-ish, maybe even up to like 7,000. And so we are seeing that profit. But again, overall, again, that is the direct consequence. This is a $50,000 loss. Again, I'm already the victim of so much crime. Again, shares sitting in my account that I can't manage properly directly and immediately because of crime. And so, again, it goes from $6 to $12, and then you try to, again, just hold that because you've been sitting underwater, when in reality, that is when you add. And the only reason I can't add is because I haven't had cash flow ever. At any point in time, I've never made a livable wage. So, again, this is not shoulda, woulda, coulda. I'm not sitting here saying, we're going to nail all of these trades. But the swing of the understanding of what, quote-unquote, alternative pharmacy is, or, again, these pharmacy disruption, alternative medicine, which is terrible labeling in terms of policy is just the most stark contrast that exists. And so, again, this was more of a when, not an if, and we just couldn't average down because we've never had cash flow, and it doesn't overall matter, but this is 100%, a $55,000 swing of literally just sitting here, actually. So again, thank you, Governor DeWine. Thank you to our great Supreme Leader, Donald. Again, in addition to, again, the untold or uncountable or innumerable amount of direct financial damages from the violation of my constitutional rights that happens every day, all day, by hundreds of thousands of people. But over here, we still, on top of that, we get fraudulently duressed and extorted out of, again, another $50,000. Because that's 2 years of me just having security, that's new money for the first time in years. And no, but regardless, talking about the management, not going to shoulda, woulda, coulda. Again, there's not shoulda, woulda, coulda. I am the victim of crime in so many profound ways. Again, this is $50,000 of my money that, again, I just had to hold shares that I couldn't hold because I have to try to manage money in an environment under duress where you can't. If you have to snap your neck every 6 months, you can't meaningfully do shit. So regardless, this literally, again, this is another 1,000-bagger or 1,000% 10-bagger return. Monitored, again, directly documented for years right here. But we get this appreciation 100%. We have these phase 3 trials. Again, depression's not well defined, but the response to these pharmaceuticals that aren't pharmaceuticals, that are just, again, this isolation of a natural molecule, but LSD is not natural, so then we just have toxicity versus benefit, right? It's not like we have kind of this appeal like, I'm all natural, but it's like you eat food and you consume, again, BCAAs, whey protein, creatine, a couple of the other supplements actually have, again, direct value, where it's just and then so overall the general principle is of, you certainly have biology where you add something that is quote unquote not natural and is directly beneficial. It is not toxic. It does not cause damage to your health or your biological function, and it increases efficiency, digestion, absorption of minerals, absorption of nutrients, so on and so forth. Just point being is there's some supplements, I think calcium is one of them, that's pretty much, it's like you take the pill, but it has no absorption value. I think there's a little term for it. The point being is you can take things that are not naturally in your body to benefit your health. And conversely, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's not toxic. We went through that last time. But point being is the reaction to even, again, I don't even like the term pharmaceutical, but pharmaceutical LSD, more or less, is adequate for our conversation here. And so the reaction is genuine. Again, the depression's not well defined. People being quote unquote depressed because, again, their sensation is literally suppressed from, again, insecurity just being transferred throughout the species. Little Johnny did this at work. Oh, little Susie did this at work. Literally a measurable physical quantity. It's dissonance. It's literally like kids screaming, and it's not even an analogy. But regardless, you have a real response to kind of like a mislabeling, not really a real disease, but it's 100% effective and it's 100% safe. And it's, again, I don't know about this specific drug because, again, LSD is 100% safe itself. It's one of the least toxic things that's ever been documented. But regardless, and so to the actual biological effect, it's this is working, but not, right? It's not curing depression. It's just, again, this is when people would say, what is clean energy? If you have ever taken a low dose psilocybin, LSD, DMT, and DMT is a little different, but not really, just in the duration and the onset of the effect. But it's, again, what people say is when they have this after effect, because specifically to DFTX, it's they take 100 milligram and then they see benefits for 12 weeks. Right? One suppression of that insecurity gives you benefit for 12 weeks, and then you're still in that society with that suppression of emotion, of sensation, of literally cognitive dissonance being transferred. And so then that's when the quote-unquote effects or the benefits wane. Point being is it's not the actual, again, the metabolic process of what is the relationship of toxicity and inebriation, right? You drink beer, it's the inebriation is tied to the toxicity, right? You're literally metabolizing alcohol, which is toxic, and it gives you a little bit of inebriation. But LSD, cannabis, it's what is the physiological, pharmacological classification of what's going on? And so, directly from a scientific experiential perspective, low dose like LSD, psilocybin is what people would call clean energy, right? Energy or movement potential. You don't want to get all jittery and have a crash, right? Like caffeine. And then in consensus, we have this presentation of like, hey, I have my tea right here, which is actually getting kind of cold. 1 second. You guys just postulate, just sit back and just talk about one of your favorite proofs that I've done. I hope you had some time to reflect on my greatness. But the point being is, now I made a joke and I forgot my train of thought. But what people say is like tea or caffeine, right, is typically tied to what people call energy, right? I go get a Monster, I have caffeine, I have an energy drink. But then it's like, again, I don't want to have this crash, I don't have this up and down. And so then people say, I want clean energy. Sometimes they're talking about, our environmental goals, and sometimes they're just talking about, hey, I want to be alert, focused, ability, have movement potential, the capacity to be productive, get work done. And so the physiological effect of what you get from like a low dose psilocybin, LSD, what people call microdosing, is what I would associate to as clean energy. And so you're seeing that real effect. Like that's what's getting reported. And again, when you're seeing this 12-week, that's when the benefits start to wear off. That's just because you're still swamped in a world of just cognitive dissonance literally being transferred. So that's 100% what's happening here. Scientifically, that was kind of, I think the topics I wanted to cover on a direct personal level, just logging from when I left the hospital to when I got my blood work in March. Again, I had taken 300 milligrams of CBD edible, and another kind of consideration to this progression of cellular regeneration, right? Stop drinking alcohol, you remove the stimulus of what's causing this oxidative stress, this damage, this collagen depositing into firmness into the liver. And so then there's this overall consideration, because I told you about the doctor. She's like taking one blood pressure reading, and it's like, oh, here's a pill. And again, she doesn't even like say, hey, like what's the toxicity load for the liver, right? Like that's another, I'm in here for a liver thing, and it's just like, we're going to give you another pill, and we're not even going to talk about like the metabolic like processes. And again, like the overall, to me specifically, and overall with the violation of my rights and the science that has been restricted, is purely fraudulent to a profound, there couldn't be a bigger problem. Obviously no one cares because there's no rules and no laws. But point being is this consideration of just like overall workload for the liver, right? Or just any organ. And so on a direct personal level, the doctor had no consideration, again, nurse practitioner, whatever. And again, as a scientist, it's just, I can feel your thought process, literally. That's always all going on. And it's just like, I can't make this, you have authority over me and you have no idea what you're doing. I can't make it stop. And so huge problem on a personal level. And then on a scientific level, it's just like, okay, what's the overall processing load? Like that is a consideration, right? Blood pressure, you took one reading, which again, I do 3 readings, I do it all of the time. I measure my blood pressure all of the time. It's effectively normal. Like I might get a couple of high readings into like the 120s to 130s, but at most of the time it's like 115/75. You go into the doctor, I have this natural capacity, it synchronizes to everything, and then I can feel your inability to think. And it's just like, this person has my doctor, wow. But just overall the cellular progression, right, where it's just like, it's very like, you have L2 liver fibrosis. So it's like, if I have one more drink, is my liver fibrosis going to go to L3? Or like, what's the progression? And then you research it, and it's like, okay, these things progress. We still have this overall fact of, people where they have liver disease that progress to cirrhosis, of what is classified as alcoholics. And again, of the scientific terms, we'll just go with whatever people have presented there is fine. But then only like 20% progresses to cirrhosis. And so then we just have this overall presentation of policy where it's just like people can't control their behavior, so it's like total abstinence. And it's like, I'm personally totally abstinent because, again, I have no draw to the physiological effects of alcohol at all. I don't have constitutional rights. I need to consume calories, and it is such a direct mechanical failure of being able to eat, chew, and swallow. And that's super specific to me, to my estate. Anybody who tries to lie about what has happened in my life, I couldn't be addicted to anything. It's like my natural level of vibrancy and awareness is just profound. And so, again, when that gets disrupted and then you literally lose the ability to eat, survival is about consuming calories. It's just a fact. But point being, of the proctoring, the policy, the being the doctor and telling a patient of just like the overall policy environment of medicine is just like abstinence. And it's just like, it's not reflective of scientific understanding. If you wanted to err, like it's not like an error, because again, a lot of people don't think at all. And so again, the abstinence kind of thing is just to people who can't control their behavior whatsoever. Like I said, I'm talking from a place where it's like I have no desire to drink alcohol again, but then this overall progress again is just like the psychology of it, right? Because a lot of people crash out, right? It's just like, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do this and so I'm just going to go hard until I can't go hard anymore. Or it's just like, to me, it's that psychological aspect where it's like, you're saying fuck it. You're saying, I'm just going to go for it. I don't care what the consequences are. And then kind of comparing that to the empirical fact where it's like, if you go on a cruise and it's like you get 15 free alcoholic beverages a day, and that's kind of more of, again, just reflective of if you were sitting around with nothing to do, but not in like a detrimental way, you're on vacation, that's just kind of like the natural quantity of what people can consume. And so point being is this psychology of like going hard, insecurity, that is what people again call mental illness. But still not, it's wrong labeling, but that type of behavior, that is when you get into this place of, again, specifically to drinking, of like drinking till you black out, or drinking till you throw up, or drinking to fall asleep even. Right? Like I have never slept consistently, and when I was drinking consistently, I would never sleep to like, or drink to like pass out. Like it would just never be a psychology. And now, frankly, again, your liver's processing X amount of quantity of molecule of substance. It doesn't matter. Like if you're happy, sad, you're like, that doesn't matter. But point being is reflective of overall data sets. It just seems to be like, again, when you have what would be classified as alcoholics, again, some amount of going to the hospital, some amount of personal classification, then 20% of that progresses to cirrhosis. It's like, do you have a handful of people, again, which I would kind of like say like me, where it's like, I'm not trying to hurt myself. I have nothing to do. I have money and I'm just kind of sitting around and it's like, okay, I guess I'll drink some beer. And then the minute you have any sort of biological effect, it's like, okay, well, I won't do that anymore. It's just not like it's not like you're not trying to like satisfy some sort of underlying problem. You guys have ever sat on a couch and been bored and like, what am I going to do? Let's crack a beer. And so to me, it's just this like, what makes the cellular degradation go from this person has certainly had some sort of problem, or again, to be labeled in this study of saying an alcoholic that doesn't have cirrhosis? Is it that continual, you have some sort of initial problem, and then you just keep saying fuck it after that? It's kind of like my thought, because again, you can even get fatty liver again with like no symptoms, and you're just like, you might be drinking too much, or again, above the recommended levels, or again, any substance consumption. Because as we stressed last time, again, I see the overall guidelines as just an unstressed populace, which gives you kind of like lower range numbers. Not to say that you should go push the limits on anything, but again, just trying to talk about the science, because of the cellular progression. It's just not meaningful to say, total abstinence, or else again, your organ's going to blow up tomorrow. But reflective of the overall behavior of the populace, they can't control their behavior. Or again, for me, frankly, personally, it's just like, you could literally just not buy a beer can and put it in your mouth. It's like that is 0% difficult. And so, but more really emphasizing, again, not me personally, the general application of saying, because then again, let's say you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and then you go in there and it's like all of these to a doctor's office, and they have all of these considerations for like salt intake. So on my personal scientific understanding, reading, again, iterating the entire logical structure that exists, salt seems to be pretty well tolerated, and it's one of these things where it's just like, hey, you got to do something to remove salt, limit salt, and then again we have this whole progress we talked about before, butter is bad or fat is bad, and then like they don't even talk about like fat being metabolized first from the bloodstream for your energy, for your movement potential being converted into momentum. It comes from the fat of your bloodstream, and so it's like you want healthy fat. And so it's just like the overall progress in proctoring and administration of medicine is fraudulent. Terrible. F minus, not acceptable for society. Again, truly the point here in discussion is, again, what really is this progression of cellular degeneration? To me, there's a huge component of, again, you just have to like keep doubling down. Like, you're hurting yourself. And you just like keep saying you have some sort of initial something disrupts, like, hey, again, jaundice, just elevated liver enzymes. But again, it's that psychology of crashing out to me, which seems apparent of, again, just people not being able to control their behavior, regardless of what avenue that manifests in. Being a workaholic, being an alcoholic, being an adrenaline junkie. It's all this manifestation of what I call, or what is, insecure behavior. Regardless, so I did want to touch on, again, cellular generation progress. Definitely seems to be a more mature conversation, needs to be just, again, presented to the entire public for that. Same with like dietary sugar. That does seem to be pretty caustic. Dietary salt seems to be all right. And then for my own personal log, again, 300 milligrams of CBD from when I left the hospital to when I had my blood work in March. And then I went down, and once there was no cancer, no mass, no nothing like that. Because that's an effective dose for, again, more of like the severe, again, cancer specifically, and then even higher doses up into for like epilepsy. And so, but once that cleared out, again, it's just like, okay, the stimulation agent has been removed. So it's like, again, I'm thinking it's a pretty good biological, not assumption, but hey, you remove the consumption of alcohol, this shouldn't progress. And so then there is the consideration of, hey, is 300 milligrams of CBD, again, just an overall, cannabinoids do not pose like any sort of meaningful toxicity. And so it's like, okay, but still, just overall workload of the liver is, X amount of milligrams of anything. Like how detrimental is that? Because then you can run the numbers, and again, if you're drinking 10, 15, 20 beers, right, 4% alcohol, numbers off the top of my head, this is not going to go well, but how many milliliters, and then 4% of that, and then each milliliter is, 1 gram, and 1 gram's 1,000 milliliters. The overall quantity of just alcohol molecule that your liver's processing on 15 beers is substantial. And so then it gets kind of this consideration where, again, kind of using like random analogies right now, not random, but like you have extremely potent substances like fentanyl or carfentanil, just to use like the relevant ones. But again, that introduces this isolation process, right? You're refining and you're isolating a compound. Point being is, for talking about overall processing load of an organ, right? You can have lethal doses at extremely low levels of fentanyl. But my point being is, if you take a substance and, again, we have this well-defined limit of, if you have cellular disruption to even a severe level, you die, right? So that's our well-defined out of bounds for biology is death. But point being is like, look how not toxic alcohol is, right? You can consume a substantial amount and it's still just overall, you might have a hangover, but if you're not, consuming regular, it's pretty much not a big deal whatsoever. I mean, that's why it's integrated into our society. But overall, it's very not toxic, but it's still toxic. Again, highlighting again scientifically, what is the relationship of inebriation and intoxication? We're not really trying to focus on that again, but the overall, again, just total quantity of milligrams. Well, we'll just say you do go on a limit sugar. That kind of seems to be a general principle, not in any sort of like extreme way. Just use moderation. Salt intake seems to be all right, but then you just have protein, carbs, which carbs gets metabolized pretty much effectively into sugar. Right, all of your energy primarily comes from the fat in your bloodstream, and then protein. It's kind of, again, your cellular composition is not complicated. But so it's, again, like, why doesn't eating a lot of food, this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, is it just, what is causing that? Is it carrying the actual body weight, which seems to be substantially detrimental? I guess it would be that. But just point being is just, if you eat in moderation, and that's kind of the overall, do these things in moderation, to me is awareness of this psychological crashing out phenomenon, where if you're not in like a psychologically bad place, you don't like, everything is in moderation, like naturally. And then just the added consideration, if you literally have nothing to do all day, it's just like you get bored kind of quick. Point being is the overall workload of just processing material, right? Specifically for your liver, specifically for your kidneys, but just any organ that's always on and it's always moving through the bloodstream. It's like, what causes abnormality? Because it's always working, right? And so, point being is it just the overall quantity of, like, again, like 400 milligrams, I think is like the FDA recommended for caffeine, where it's just like, what total workload is that, like, what, just in general. So then getting back to the CBD, they're going to go from 300 milligrams, where it's like that's an effective dose, just on my own consideration, no real worry about the toxicity of CBD. But anyway, go back. So since March till now, I've just a daily 30 milligram CBD, full spectrum, just from a hemp plant. And so then I sip tea, and again, I just specifically to tea, again, just kind of talking, because why not? But like, I enjoy it like after I eat. And so again, that's another thing where it's just like, again, people say spicy food is spicy, and I'm like, I get what you're saying, but that's not the word spice. I like a little bit of caffeine for digestion. Like, I don't, I would never like wake up and like, I'm going to drink tea to like get my day going. But like after I eat breakfast, I enjoy a cup of tea, bro. Isn't it a thing to have a cup of tea? And then, like in the afternoon, either before dinner or after dinner. But for digestion, which seems, again, scientifically on a personal level, never really been a caffeine consumer, but certainly enjoy, again, 1 or 2 cups of tea, just kind of as digestion, but also the ritual of heating up a cup of water, and you just kind of sit there and, again, just, I'm an intellectual. Just talk about one of your favorite proofs that I've articulated. Take some more tea. Yeah. So yeah, again, I hope you had more time to reflect on my greatness. But point being, again, just even with a substance that is overall really not that toxic, alcohol, and just what is the relationship of molecule or sugar, again, just anything where it's like, there's definitely cause and effect, right? There's definitely too much alcohol, bad liver, too much sugar, bad liver. This overall caustic environment, I like that word for sugar specifically. But again, a lot of beer is carbohydrate. And so it's all just like, what is this about? Like, what molecule structure causes inflammation, causes dis-ease in the terms of metabolism, not sustained pathology. And so overall quantity of consideration was another thing. And so, because there is one study floating around with CBD where it's like it caused a spike of like, it seemed like a pretty good study of, 100 healthy adults take CBD of like, I forget the dosage, but it was a substantial, it was like the epilepsy dose. And it caused like 5% to have like elevated liver enzymes. And so again, with blood work, that's always, again, the biggest of, your scorecard of what's going on. But just on a personal level, reducing the overall workload of the liver without any sort of tumor, without any sort of pathology of that severity, going to like just a maintenance dose of, again, this is back to the conversation of, is there any supplementation that just a healthy person takes it and it benefits health in general? Yes. And so, again, I get blood work again in March or in September, but that's what I got is 30 milligrams of CBD. And then, again, the 0.15 of portobellos. But again, that is what I would consider clean energy, none of which, there's no physiological effect on a personal level that like affects anything. And so, again, we talked about that last time with creativity. That's another big one where people's like, I need to get, high on this or that to be creative, a lot in the music industry, but a lot of it anywhere. To be productive, people have this attenuation of substance consumption. It doesn't have to be like drugs, just like doing some sort of ritual to be productive. And the creative process just comes from interacting with the world, trying to do new things, sitting down, talking one day, and then the next day you can at least talk about the thing you talked about the last day. And so it's just this cumulative effort of being creative, sitting down, putting out work, and then you can build a portfolio of things, right? From financial trading basics, it's just me sitting here. But then after a while, you have a whole environment of which you've articulated thoughts and ideas and responded to current events and so on and so forth. Which, again, why isn't Andrew Ross Sorkin in prison? Is still kind of there. Penguin Random House still did not respond. Again, extortion. Hey, Brad, you've taken our property. No, I definitely, what are you even talking about? And then they don't even respond. Like, I don't even get, they didn't respond. I responded in a direct legal, hey, just send me the information so I have this so I can do what I need to do legally. And then just no response. And so, again, I would have tried to, I can't risk my YouTube channel, and so it's like they send you 3, and then it's just for whatever reason, so I just have to delete those, and then they don't even respond. Again, Madison for Sander. Yeah. So, again, this is just fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy at the highest level. This is a publishing house publishing people like Sean Carroll's books again. There's Professor Carroll, another huge criminal. I have to edit my most recent science derivation video, which make a lot of appearances, Professor, because you're a criminal. But kind of lost where I was going after that. And so that was my kind of consideration, just, again, leftover thoughts for biological, again. And so, again, to my nurse practitioner, when she's like, one blood pressure reading, here's a pill. It's just like, no. Like, and it doesn't even talk about what we just articulated with overall workload. No consideration at all. None. Again, I can't emphasize enough the medical, quote-unquote, professionals that I deal with, the law enforcement, quote-unquote, professionals I deal with. It's just the amount of crime being committed against me. I just document it. There was nothing to say, and you guys' career's over instantly. To the management of this trade, so those were the actual biological thoughts. To the management of this trade, because I can't have a plan, this is one of the areas where it's just like, I'm not going to be happy with whatever I do. Because we have good profit, and so we depreciate tomorrow a little bit, I'm going to feel kind of sad. I don't lock in profits, I'm going to feel kind of sad. I lock in some profits, we go up, I'm going to feel kind of sad. And so I think I'm just going to hold. Again, this is so like in real time of what I'm deciding to do. But again, because it's like, again, if I was trying to trade for, this would be a big appreciation, as we started off and talking about. But at the same time, I can't manage anything meaningfully. I'm going to get extorted, so that creates a great, healthy trading environment. But it's a couple $1,000s where it's like, okay, I could go buy something. Again, I could get my e-bike back that I wasn't going to buy, but then I lost money. And it's like, oh, fear, like sad that I didn't buy the things I wasn't going to buy. It's just like, just acknowledging sentiment. But point being is this is certainly dollar figures I would want to lock in. I do think this is going to continue upward. I mean, this looks like a kind of a solid bull flag. I mean, yesterday kind of did the same thing. But point being, on the immediate term, just kind of scrolling the boards of different stock forums. Not a ton of like just any sort of thoughts here. Those are stuff I always look at, but it's just, again, the market dynamics to me I've observed enough where it's like, regardless of what people's saying, like the way we approach it or the way I approach it, like it gets, I'm not like saying I'm long or short of this or that. It's just like, how does the market work? It's like, okay, I think this is the points we can try to make money. So again, just trying to emphasize, I do feel like a mature trader. I just can't meaningfully manage anything because, well, I don't have constitutional rights. But this is a 1,000% appreciation. And so if I had a sizable position, if I had my 1,000 shares, this is certainly a level I would be locking in. Because again, when you're up 1,000%, you lock in 30% of your share size, and you've already secured meaningful profit. Right? This was a $15,000 original position. We had to close it into the negative. But if you double, or again you go up again, this would be 1,100 shares. So again, $55,000 of value ish. Well, 44,000. Again, regardless, it would be like numbers right now are just blanking. Again, that's the same. It's like in my derivation, numbers are not just like relevant as shit, and then you like go back to like numbers and it's just not point. There's no point. But point being is this: I would certainly, if I had a meaningful share size, I would have locked in, again, probably 30 to 40%. I do think this will continue into specifically for immediate term management going into tomorrow's Friday. I see this as having another appreciation. If this breaks into the 50s, this would be a reasonable time to take short-term immediate profits, meaning for like a retracement for a couple days or whatever into next week. But overall, this is a winner that I don't want to cut too short because it's a long position. Again, these are the big ones, these overall policy and 18-month changes or 6 months changes in relation to 3 years. That type of discrepancy that we've talked about before is the biggest swings that you can get in with an appreciating a long position. And so obviously our great governor and president fucked that up for me again, because this would be $50,000 of new money for me. But just put it on the tab of extortion, racketeering, fraud. Again, that new aggravation of, again, if you get held against your will in your own home, that is kidnapping. It's kidnapping. I am being held against my will, against my constitutional rights. I have enough property where I would immediately be able to leave if I wasn't, again, the victim of crime. So kidnapping is another one, again, done by a government conglomeration in this RICO environment. And so that's fun. That's another one for you, Governor. Go look that up if you even know what the law is. If you can, Governor DeWine, can you spell, brother? Could you not spell words? Type in the Constitution. It's a great read. But regardless, that brings me to the end of today. This will probably be a standalone video. And I think we covered what I wanted to cover. So, again, I continue to be the victim of profound, substantial, ongoing crime. I continue to seek asylum. My rights are violated so profoundly. I just wanted to be able to eat properly, sleep properly, and work. I can't, and I just document that as much as I can. That is what I have for now, and we will check in later.